All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's Shamans Directory live event. We have a bit of an introduction to let you know about Shamans Directory and everyone who's here today. So let me get started with that. So I am Tricia Bennett, and I live on the northeast coast of the United States, and I'm one of the founding members of Shamans Directory. And I'm always honored to be one of the hosts at our Saturday live events. And these events are always rich with beauty and wisdom and knowledge. And so I invite you to turn off your devices, maybe light a candle, do whatever you do to create a little bit of sacred space for yourself right now so that you can really take in the wisdom that will be offered over the next couple of hours. If you enjoy your time with us today, we welcome you to join our community. You can visit our website at shamansdirectory.com to get listed as a lineage-based healer, to make an appointment with a practitioner, or simply to stay updated on all of our events. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Shamans Directory, and on YouTube also at Shamans Directory, where you can find the recording of this and all of our past live events, as well as interviews with members of Shamans Directory so that you can see what it might be like to make an appointment with one of our listed members. We also have just opened the Sacred Activism page on our website, which is brand new, where we are listing programs and organizations that we know are contributing to the preservation and perpetuation of Indigenous communities, wisdom, languages, land, and more across the planet. So you can learn more about that at shamansdirectory.com/sacred activism. So, again, I want to welcome you to our program today and tell you a little bit about how this conversation came to be. So, we have wanted to have John Lockley join us for some time, and we're really honored to be introducing him to you through the Shamans Directory community. We know that many of you already know him. And Wake Wheeler is one of our hosts. Many of you probably also know him from either Shaman to Shaman or from our summits that we've had. And I just want to have Wake say a quick hello. He's here. So just so that you see him.
Greetings. It's my honor to be here. It's always a treat to join Tricia in these presentations. And I think we have a very, I would say, cutting edge conversation. And John, I can see that you're getting set, and it's so nice to see you and to be able to work with you today.
So, John, we just want you to say a quick hello so people can see
Hi. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for inviting me.
You are welcome. We are honored to have you here. And I was just about to tell everyone a little bit about how this particular conversation came about that we're going to have today. So I was saying that we've wanted to have you join us for some time and that you and Wake and I met to discuss what we might talk about. And there were all kinds of things. There were your trainings, your book, your trips to the Kalahari, the story of becoming an elder in your tradition. And what came up when we were speaking is something even bigger. It was a more global realization of the fact that there's really a spiritual hunger going on across the planet to seek out indigenous wisdom in ways that in greater ways than probably ever before, and that many indigenous communities are reaching out in ways that are very unfamiliar to them to try to meet us to answer our questions and offer their wisdom, and that there is a way that there are things that we need to learn about protocols and about different communities and approaching elders that we don't know. And we need to learn so that we're not imposing our Western ways on, on these beautiful elders who are willing to offer their wisdom to us. So we thought that we would use this program today, especially in light of what you're going to share about your own experience, how this is reflected globally, how we can think about this and learn from your experience globally. So, what I'd like to also start by saying is that I've never had a better opportunity to use the phrase addressing the elephant in the living room. I don't know how many of you know that book, but John has elephants behind him. We're journeying to Africa today. And it's a common assumption to think that a healer from South Africa would be Black. And the fact is that in South Africa, the population is about 8% white and 80% Black. So it's a normal assumption that people might make. However, the beauty of lineage-based traditions around the world is that the elders do the choosing of who is going to be trained in their traditions. And how they choose who's going to be trained is not based on the color of a person's skin, but through dreams, long-term unexpected illnesses, birthmarks, chance encounters, and many other signs that are determined as indications of a calling by the elders themselves. So, yes, John is a white South African man. He is also a fully initiated Sangoma, elder, healer, and shaman in the Xhosa and Swazi lineages from South Africa with over 20 years of experience. So this may seem unusual to outsiders, but for his teachers, he is no less a Sangoma than they are. He is no different to them than any other man or woman chosen by the elders to be trained as a healer and teacher in their tradition. So at Shamans Directory, we are moved and inspired by the generosity and inclusiveness of traditional elders from around the world who encourage us every day to expand our ideas of what is possible for us as individuals, for humanity, and for our planet. And so we're honored to have John here with us today, and I'm going to turn it over to Wake to give you a little bit more of a formal introduction of John, and we'll begin today's program.
Thank you, Tricia. John Lockley, as Tricia has said, is a fully initiated and ordained Sangoma shaman in the two lineages in South Africa. And the Sangoma are known as people of the song, people of the drum, who share deep relationship with their ancestors. He was foreseen in a dream by his teacher, a senior Sangoma who invited him to be her apprentice. His apprenticeship lasted for 10 years. He was one of the first modern white men in recent times awarded the designation of a senior Sangoma elder. His kosher name, given by his teacher, translates to the messenger or bridge between cultures. What could be more appropriate than that? For the last 20 years, then, John has pioneered the bridge between modern Western psychology and traditional South African healing, teaching people how they can reconnect to their ancestors with spirit and with the earth. He facilitates this bridging through his retreats in the Kalahari Desert and in South Africa every year. John also offers private divination and healing sessions online, as well as group-oriented monthly ceremonies. He's the author of the book Leopard Warrior and the audio teachings The Way of the Leopard, both published by Sounds True. He splits his time between South Africa, Botswana, and the Kalahari Desert and Canada. Wow, this is a while in coming, John, and I'm so happy that you're here. John is a shaman. Number one, he's a shaman, a senior Sangoma elder himself. No question about that. He approached his teacher. He had an inspiration through the dream time, and so did she. And they met together, and he was accepted as an apprentice. A very unusual situation, but he dedicated himself to 10 years of apprenticeship, learning the ways of relationship, the ways of the Sangoma, learning how to be the shaman he has become. He, because of his experience, has a wealth of wisdom, and especially with cross-cultural relationships with spiritual elders. And it was our invitation then, in conversations after John's summit presentation, to share his stories and insights and give us his guidance through personal experience, so we may apply his wisdom to our own relationships as we seek elder wisdom, as we seek elder teachings, as we enter into our own sacred relationships with respect and honor that John has shown. So it's my delight, it's my honor to be here today, to join in the conversation with John Lockley, to engage in this exchange. And frankly, I felt nervous this morning, even though we've talked so many times, John, that you're a senior Sangoma elder. I feel some deference that I don't even know how to show. So I welcome you, I honor you, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thanks, Wake. Yeah, and thank you, Tricia, and everyone for signing up and sitting with us today. It's always nice to sit in community. So thank you so much.
How would you like to begin, John? Certainly the story of your meeting your teacher and beginning your apprenticeship has been discussed a bit in your summit interview. But what do you think is important for us to learn first off?
I think the most important is for everyone to have a relationship with their own spirit, with their own umoya, and that is the cutting edge. And I talk about, with my current work, I talk about the call of the wild. And the call of the wild, as you can see with these elephants, is represented in a beautiful way with my elephant friends. The call of the wild starts with each person befriending the breath inside of them, befriending their connection to their heart and their mind, and befriending their connection to their own shadow, to those parts of themselves they don't want to look at, and befriending their relationship with their own bones, with their ancestors. And once people come into that space of that call of the wild, where they're listening to the wind inside of them, then they are ready for their calling. So everyone is called. Like in Buddhism, the Buddha said, everyone has a purpose. And the most important thing is for each person to find their purpose. Not for the Buddha to find your purpose, or for Jesus, or for Muhammad. The responsibility for each human being is for them to find their purpose. So as my Xhosa elders would say, people are born human, but they have to make a decision to become human. So to become human means feel the breath inside of you, feel the wind as it's emanating your body and giving you life, feeling the relationship of combustion inside of you and alchemy as your breath fires up your heart. And as your breath fires your heart, you have life. And as we say in Zen, why do you eat every day? What is your purpose? What's your face going to be when you die? What is your face before you're born? And nowadays, with social media and the way the world has got, it's very narcissistic. It's all about me, me, me. So it's become very individualized. However, with spiritual practice, it's about connecting to your soul, to the face that has no name, the face that has no name and has no gender and has no color and has no culture. So what is your face that has no name? And the opposite of that is the face that does have a name: Facebook, Instagram, social media. I have, look at me, follow me, look at me. The spiritual path is about killing the ego. Killing your ego is not an easy endeavor, and it's part of what Carl Jung speaks about in terms of individuation, the individuation process. And all traditional cultures have very rigorous initiation processes that you have to go through. And as you do that, you might experience severe illness. You might experience severe emotional trauma, madness. And all of this speaks about the dissolution of the ego of I am. Because if you're holding strongly onto I am, how are you going to help someone in front of you? How are you going to let go your ego and feel their pain, feel their suffering? How are you going to help the elephants if you are holding strongly onto I am? You can't feel the elephant spirit then. So the point of this work is beyond culture. The point of this work is about each person connecting to their soul and their umoya and their spirit. And, you know, shamanism, and in particular the Sangoma culture, is one particular fragrance. It's one particular petal in the flower of humanity. If someone decides that they are being called in the yogic way, and they're being called through chanting and through chanting the name of Shiva and through doing yogic or Hindu practices, that's exactly the same. It's just a slightly different way, an emanation. It's a slightly different emanation of bringing this through. And the same in Buddhism. You know, it's all about what is the breath inside of you and what is your purpose. And that is the hallmark of mystical traditions throughout the world. So I am coming in with this emanation right now as a Sangoma, teaching about the same thing, but with different cultural cues, because this is my background. I was born in South Africa. I was educated in South Africa. I was baptized. I was initiated. So my home environment and my cultural environment is South Africa. So I'm speaking about that. But because of my travels, I also have a wealth of international experience. And it's important to bring that in because sometimes people have no relationship about Africa. And that's what we're talking about today. So thank you, Wake.
Oh my goodness. The call of the wild. I know you felt a strong call of the wild yourself. Would you like to speak at all about that? Like how it rose within you or how you knew what actions to take?
Yes, well, you know, in the 80s when I was a teenager, I had a very strong affinity for the wilderness. You know, I loved wilderness spaces, and I used to take my dog, my beloved dog, who was a bull mastiff. I used to take her for walks along the riverbed every day, and I used to just love to follow her and listen to the birds. And I wanted that wilderness space near the river to be wilder. And so I used to read all of Lawrence van der Post's books on the Bushmen. And I was 14 years old at the time. And I just wished to live in a space where it was wild, you know, where the lions were roaming, where the space was wild, and where I could commune with my spirit in that wilderness setting. And things, strange, mysterious things were started to happen to me as I entered puberty. I started having very prophetic dreams, and around the age of 16, I started my calling illness. I started getting sick in various ways. So without going into it with everyone, I started, mysterious things started happening to me. And that time it was apartheid in South Africa, and white males were conscripted. They were drafted into the military. So we had to go into the military. And I had one saving grace, and that is that I was allowed to choose what branch of the armed forces to go into. So at that stage, I was having these profound dreams and these experiences with the wilderness, but also with nature. And I started to develop this feeling about medicine and about learning medicine. So I thought, well, why don't I choose the medical corps, and then I will be given an opportunity to learn medicine and to be a paramedic. So I had this idea that maybe I'd become an operational medic and go to the front lines in Angola, because at that stage there was a 10-year war like Vietnam happening in Angola. So I had this feeling about being an operational medic and helping and going into Angola. Again, it was going to hit two birds for me, and that one bird was wilderness in Angola, and the second was medicine, learning about medicine. So my story is quite long because I went into the military, I went into the armed forces, and the war in Angola just ended. So we had a lot of very sick and very injured soldiers in our hospitals. So there was no need for me to be an operational medic anymore. But what was needed for me was to be a medic in the hospital. So I was sent into one military hospital, which is one of our largest hospitals in South Africa. And then I was trained as a medic. And my first assignment was working with special forces soldiers and helping to rehabilitate them from the war in Angola. And you see, there's about 3 or 4 wars in Southern Africa at that time. There was the war in Angola. Then there was war happening in Mozambique that South Africa was involved in. South Africa was also involved in the war in Namibia. And then there was a civil war in South Africa, which everyone knows, which is apartheid. So there we had very good soldiers. They were being used a lot, and they were very traumatized and very injured. And there I was at the front lines. So I remember doing night duty and sitting on the floor of the hospital and sitting and talking to one of the special forces soldiers. And he was from Angola. And I developed a friendship with him, and I really loved him. And I said to him, after a while getting to know him, I said to him, why did you join the South African military? Because he's from Angola and he's from a rural village in Angola. So why would you join the South African military? And he stopped for a moment and he said, I had no choice. He said it was either the guerrilla faction that were going to come into my village and they were going to take me, and I would not be trained properly, and my family would not be looked after. I would not be educated. I would not be given much food and much clothing. And more than likely, I was going to be killed by the South African forces. So I chose the South African force because they would educated me, they clothed me, and they also looked after my family. And so it was very, after a bit of time, it was very clear for me that a lot of these soldiers, a lot of these special forces soldiers were like monks in some ways. You know, they didn't have strong egos, and they were extremely intuitive. And that intuition is what saved them from possible death. And one story I'd like to share with everyone, and then I'll get back to you, Wake, because like I say, my story of initiation is a long one. But I had the time in the military in terms of being a military medic was very, very important for me. And one last, a couple of things I can say is that I had this intuition when I was 16 that I needed to experience death, and that once I experienced death, I would know what my calling is. And so this is an important point for all the listeners and people looking to find their calling. It's not about you feeling your own death. I mean, it is that, is sure, but it's about allowing yourself to feel the suffering of someone else. And there is the route to your own calling. Okay, so that's where it's not about you, it's about us. So at the age of 16, I had this feeling that in order for me to find my calling, I had to come close to death. I had to work with death. So when I was in the military, I was working with these soldiers that they were sick, but they were not on death's door. So I worked in the rehabilitation ward for a number of months, and then I actually got a transfer because I wanted to work in intensive care. And I know it seems strange maybe for people, but if you have this calling inside of you where your spirit is pushing you to work with death in order for you to realize certain very strong teachings, then that's what you do. So I asked the matron of the hospital to get me a transfer into an intensive care unit. And she was completely gobsmacked. And she looked at me and she said, "This is the first time in my life," she said, where a drafted, conscripted soldier is looking to do more work, not less. She said, "It's going to be difficult. Are you ready for that?" And I said, "Yes," because of my dreams. My dreams already prime me for that. So before I went into that intensive care, which was the neurology ward, I had a very powerful teaching with the Special Forces soldiers that I want to share with you. And this is my first Sangoma teaching. So I just want to share this with everyone, and then I'll get back to Wake. So the first Sangoma teaching happened for me where I went in every day. I used to go in to the ward, and I used to open up the curtains, and I used to say, "Good morning, guys. Did you have any good dreams?" Now, I don't know why I did that on this particular day. And I also don't know why I did it just to the black ward. So we had different rooms because there was segregation, it was apartheid. So the ward everyone would be given equal treatment, but then there'd be different rooms based on skin color. So you'd have the black guys and then you'd have the white guys. So I developed this affinity for the African, for the black guys. I don't know why. It's just, just the way it happened. And every day over a period of time, I went into their ward and I said, "Good morning, guys. Did you have any good dreams?" So these were the black Special Forces soldiers that I was feeling and I was dreaming. And there was silence. Everyone kept quiet. It was like a church. And I know they heard me. So then I just opened the curtains and I carried on with my duties. And then being Irish and looking at the sacred number of 3, I felt, okay, I need to do this at least 3 times. I don't know why. I just felt this intuition. Now, I was 18 years old and I felt things very strongly. Okay, so the next day I went into the ward and I opened the curtains and I said, "Good morning, guys. Did you have any good dreams?" Everyone was quiet. It was like a church. And the room was full of Special Forces soldiers, black soldiers. And then the third day I thought, well, there's power in 3. So I need to do it one more time. So the next day I came to work, started my shift. I opened the curtains and I said, "Good morning, guys. Did you have any good dreams?" Again, there was this silence. And then suddenly there was this voice at the back of the room. And there was this deep voice and it said, "Private, come over here. I want to speak to you." And it was Sergeant Maluleki, who was a lead sergeant of the Special Forces platoon, which is known as the Recce Reconnaissance 5. So it was the equivalent of the SEAL team in America. So he was a highly decorated soldier, highly respected and feared because he had this commanding presence. So I went to his side and I said, "Yes, Sergeant, sir, how can I help you?" And he was a Zulu man and from the Zulu tribe, big man, deep voice. And he looked at me and he said, "Private, in my dreams, in my culture, dreams are very sacred. In my culture, dreams are very sacred. When I dream, my ancestors show me who's going to live and who's going to die in my platoon. I tell my men, your people are calling you. Some of them laugh at me, but they still die." He said, "Don't ever ask me again if I've had any good dreams. In my culture, dreams are sacred." And I said, "Thank you, Sergeant, sir. Thank you." Sergeant Maluleki was becoming a Sangoma. Every single day, the black nursing staff would give him gifts every single day. And I developed a love with the staff members. Just, as people become friends and relationships go, I don't know why, but I just fell in love with them. The black staff, the nursing staff, we used to joke together. I was a young guy, and when I was educated in South Africa, I went to a private school because my dad didn't want the curse of apartheid to be on my brother and I. So he made sure that we weren't educated in a South African way, where we just went to a school with white kids because it was apartheid. So my dad made sure we went to a school where color was not an issue. And so this was one of the blessings from my dad, because when I was in this military environment, I treated everyone the same because I didn't know any different. That's the way I was brought up. So this man, Sergeant Maluleki, was becoming a Zulu Sangoma. And when he said that to me, I knew in my heart that I was becoming a Sangoma as well, just because of my dreams and the way he said it and that energy. So that was my first Sangoma teaching. Over to you, Wake.
I want to swim in what you've just offered us. It feels so deep and personal. That's one thing I love about you, John, is your willingness to share your very most personal experiences in finding your way. May I ask you about your dream, about your teacher, and perhaps something about your first encounters with her? Would that be a good conversation to have?
Yes. So what I can share with you is that I'll just finish the story with the hospital, because it was a very, very powerful time. So and the teaching for people listening is, if you're looking to find your purpose, go and donate your time with people who are sick. Go and donate your time with animals that are suffering. And go and sit in a pediatric unit where parents are looking after sick children. If you want to find your calling, that is the quickest way to find your calling, the quickest, absolutely quickest way. So I felt this in my heart. So like I say, the next movement I had in the hospital was working in the neurology ward, which was intensive care. And within 3 days, I helped put a soldier in a body bag. And I never encountered death before. And that was difficult for me. And then my next assignment was looking after a young man who was just a couple of years older than me. He was 21 and he was in a coma. And my job was to be his medic. So I nursed him for 6 weeks. And he was dying. And his mother came to me every single day and said to me, is he going to live, John, or is he going to die? Again, I was 18 years old. Can you imagine that? A mother asking you if her child is going to live or die. I just want people to really sit with that. If you're looking for your purpose, we have to feel our mortality. We have to feel it, because that's your gift, is your mortality. So this was the start of my teachings, and also what I teach, because right towards the end of his life, this young, my patient, they made a decision, the family members made a decision to turn off the life support, keeping him alive. And it was such a traumatic story and situation in the ward that even the older medics couldn't do it. They couldn't do his vital observations anymore. So I was asked by the nursing staff to be the medic, to sit by him through the final stages of his life. So my job was to feel his pulse, and I felt his pulse underneath my fingertips. And the senior nursing staff showed me, even when you could hardly feel his pulse, they started to show me where to feel it in his body. So I followed his life force slipping away. And then my last shift with him, I felt his suffering. I said goodbye to him. And then I prayed to the divine. And I said, please show me a way of healing suffering and of healing people in the situation where I can connect to the soul of someone even when they cannot speak with their words. Because this situation is wrong. What Ian is going through, the suffering that he's going through, the suffering his family is going through is wrong. I need to learn a way of healing that if I'm ever in this situation again, I can bring some peace to the mother or to the person who's sick. And I was very angry and I was very vehement, and I just shouted with my spirit, show me another way of healing, show me. And then I did my bow to my patient and I left the room. And then when I started my shift, a few days later, the room was empty. He had died. So this propelled me into an existential crisis of phenomenal proportions. And a couple of weeks after that, a friend of mine started Zen meditation classes. And I didn't know what Zen was. I didn't know what Buddhism was. And I said to my friend, what is Zen? And he said, well, Zen is a meditation practice. And it's about this guy called the Buddha who said life is suffering. And in order to understand that, you have to feel your suffering and you have to accept it. So I thought, well, that makes perfect sense to me. So I started meditation classes, and I was very lucky because the teacher we had was a lay nun, and she had been baptized by a well-known Zen master from Japan. So she started to train us. And I went on this retreat. I was still in the military. I had some leave, and I went on a retreat for 4 days with her in the mountains and other people. And then when I came back from that retreat, that's when I received my calling dream to become a Sangoma. And in that dream, it was very clear. It was like I can see you, and it was real. It was more real than life. And I was approached by a witch doctor because I didn't know what Sangomas were. I just knew the medicine men being called witch doctors. And I was approached by a witch doctor, and all I could see was these shiny eyes like diamonds. And we were in a cave, and there was a young initiate next to me. We were both the same. He was a black guy, I was a white guy, and we were lying on the ground in this cave, and he was talking to us via mental telepathy. So I said to the witch doctor, I said, train me. I said, train me. I said, in your ways. I want to understand about healing. I want to understand about nature and about suffering. Train me. And he kept quiet. And I asked him 3 times. And after the 3rd time, he said to me, in my culture, just like Sergeant Malulek, he said, in my culture, he said, if I'm going to train you, you're going to come close to death. You're going to get very, very sick, and you're going to come close to death. He said, you need to be aware of that. And then I said to him, I've already come close to death. And I said, my beloved patient died. I'm in apartheid. I'm in a civil war. And I just had to put my beloved dog down, Sheba, that I used to take to the river each day. I was so in love with her. I had to put her down, and I watched her sickness. And I said, I'm only 18. I said, if I don't learn these ways, my life is over. So then the next thing, this image appeared of the future. This witch doctor, he showed me an image of the future. And it was 5 years into the future, and everything happened, what he showed me. And then the next day, when I woke up from the dream, my legs were covered in boils. And I know it might sound strange to everyone listening, but I was happy because I knew that he'd accepted me to be his apprentice in the dream time. And I was happy. And I had these boils, and I was feeling sick, but I was like, I never had boils when I went to sleep. I was fine, So I went back to the military hospital. I was still on duty, and I went to my friends, and they got me to see a doctor really quickly. And the doctor was like, you've got tick bite fever. He said, how'd you get tick bite fever? And I said, well, I went into this forest over the weekend. He said, did anyone else get any bites? And anyone else get any tick bite fever? And I phoned my friends who went with me, and no one else. I think one friend got 1 tick bite, but no one else got sick. And so I got really, really sick with the tick bite fever, and my body started breaking down, And then at night, I got very, very prophetic dreams, like extremely. I would start to see where people are sick. I used to see the future. I started to see the future of the world. I saw the past. And one day, after having the sickness for probably maybe almost 2 years, now the sickness, for people to understand, is got very psychic, and the energy of my body went into the psychic world. So I could see things, I could feel things, but then my immune system was compromised. My physical body was compromised. Okay, so it meant that I got any kind of illness that was going around because my immune system was compromised. So this is, again, part of traditional shamanism, not just South Africa. Often people would get illness when you study traditional shamanism like I did. You find it in Siberia, South Korea. Traditional shamanism, the hallmark of it often is getting a mysterious illness, because your ego has to break down in order for you to be humbled, in order for you to work as a hollow bone. Okay, so one day I had this vision when I was walking at home in my garden, where I was shown the future, and I was shown the future. And there was this voice that spoke to me. It was a woman's voice. And she said to me, John, you're going to have to drop out of university. You're going to have to train with spiritual masters in South Korea. And you're going to have to put this first in your life, because one day we're going to call on you. One day the world is going to call on you. And you're going to know that when there's going to be the largest loss of life from a flood that has ever happened in the last 200 years. You'll know that moment. And once that moment hits, you'll know that you're going to be called to work as a spiritual teacher. But the voice said you need to be ready, and you need to be very well trained. So after that vision, it was so strong, I went to South Korea and I trained to be a monk. And then I fast forward into the future, that I was called after the tsunami hit Indonesia, which was, I think, 2006. That was just before I finished my final initiation. So after that tsunami hit Indonesia, and it was the largest loss of waterborne, largest loss of life, I knew that was the vision that the lady had shared with me. And it was time for me to start working as a spiritual teacher. And that was just before I became a senior Sangoma, which was around 2006, I think, or 2005. Anyway, the meeting of my teacher, because it was apartheid, the meeting of my beloved Xhosa teacher happened after I was in the military. So I had to deal with the illness for 7 years before I met my Xhosa teacher, because I wasn't allowed into the township because of having white skin, because of apartheid. You'd only be allowed if you had a special pass, and Black people would only be allowed in the town if they had a special pass. Only the military and doctors and people with special license were able to go wandering around in the township. You weren't able to sit there and hang out with people. So I was waiting for apartheid to end in order for me to find a teacher or have a meeting with a Sangoma. So the last thing I'll say, because I'm talking quite a bit here, so the last thing I'll say is the meeting with my Xhosa teacher, and then I'll come back to Wake. So thanks everyone for listening to me. So I was in South Korea training to possibly become a Zen monk, and I was invited by the lineage master to become his apprentice. And he said, join my Zen army, okay? And I said to him, and he said, save beings from suffering. And I said, I'm so young though. And he said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 22 years old. He said, well, I got enlightenment at 22, no problem. And then I said to him, well, I haven't had a girlfriend yet. And I kind of thought that, living the life of a monk and chanting was so easy for me, was so easy. And I thought where I struggled was conflict with people and living with people and dealing with people. I struggled because I was very shy. And I thought, this is too easy. Chanting and being in a temple and meditating, it was too easy. So in that moment, he pushed me to the edge in a Singapore airport. I was sitting next to him. He gave me his final Zen interview. And in that moment, I said to him, no. Because I realized what I needed to do was to go back to South Africa, to vote for Nelson Mandela, to take part in the first democratic elections, and then to go and have a meeting with the Sangoma. So that's what I did. I went back to South Africa. I went back to university to study psychology. And then one day in my psychology class, we were working in the township. And I asked one of the interpreters, who was Xhosa, if he could organize for me to have an interview with a Sangoma he trusted. And this was a very good friend of mine, Sid, and he was an incredible translator. And he said there was this wonderful Sangoma teacher and medicine woman who healed his son from sickness. And he said, she speaks the truth. He said, she's a good one for us to go to. So I'll speak to her and ask if she can give you an interview. So then the next day he said, yes, she's happy to meet up with you. And so the next day we went through her gate and I saw her sweeping away and I could feel her strong energy and she seemed very stern. And she looked at me and she just said, Jikelele. She just pointed, Jikelele, which means turn around, which means to go to the back where the divination room is. So we went into the divination room, we sat down. She gave us the exchange of how much it costs. So we put the exchange down. And then she closed her eyes and then she just started chanting in Xhosa. Qamagu manyangeri ngola tiqwam ngola bazali bam qamagu yena ngola abantu badala qamagu ngola mfene ngola ngwebe ngola sugwini ngola nditenda qamaga makhosi makhulu ngola tiqo ngola qamathi ngola ngola nditenda qamaga makhosi makhulu qamaga. So as she was chanting, she went into trance and then she spoke about my life. And so she spoke with great accuracy about my illness, my physical body. She spoke about my dreams. She spoke about my emotional well-being. She spoke about things that I was seeing. And then she looked at me very sternly and she said, looked into my eyes and she said, what took you so long to come to me? She said to me in Xhosa. And I said to her, apartheid. I couldn't come because of apartheid. She looked at me, we just looked into each other's eyes. And then she said, and she closed her eyes and she started to cry. And she said, we almost lost you. You almost died. She said, you almost died because the sickness has been too strong. The sickness is too strong. So then she invited me to be her apprentice. That's it. She said, become my apprentice, and then you'll stop being sick. Become a Sangoma, and you'll stop being sick. And I said, what does it mean to become a Sangoma? All I've heard about is witch doctors. But I don't believe the truth of these words about witch doctors. She said, a Sangoma is someone where the ancestors work through you in powerful ways, and you can heal people in all different ways, and you can stop being sick, but also you can heal others because the ancestors will show you how to heal people. They will show you many things. So I said to her, okay, that sounds good. I accept. I'll become your apprentice. So she said, okay, we'll come back tomorrow and I'll give you your first white beads, which will be a sign that you are my apprentice. So I said, okay. And she said, and another thing, I've got a ceremony this weekend, trance dance. And she said, you're going to become a great trance dancer. And I want you to come to that ceremony. So I said, okay, I'll come. So the next day I went, she gave me my first white beads. And on that weekend, I went to the ceremony, the trance dance, the Nhlombe. And the trance dance is where we connect to electricity, to the power of the ancestral world. So I went to the trance dance and I just heard the sound of the drums and there was this crescendo of sound. And I went with my girlfriend at the time and we just sat there. And eventually these two people came to me and they said, you can't sit down. She said, you are wearing the beads of a Sangoma and you're Mamgwebu's apprentice. You can't sit down. You have to dance. And I felt so shy, so shy. I was the only, me and my girlfriend were the only two white people in probably a, I don't know, 5 to 10 kilometer radius, you know. And so I felt very shy, you know. So one lady pulled me from one hand, the other lady pulled me from another hand. They brought me into the center of the room. And then they just started talking across it. And they just said, Berisikupo. They told the one drum to beat. And then they told the other drum, Berisikupo. And then the drums just started going. And then they just, they were like two like Boeing 747s. They're just this energy, the two ladies, they just like lifted off, just feel the energy as they were dancing. And they're big ladies. So their bums and their bosoms were hitting me because I was this skinny little kid and I was between them. And I was like, and I just felt the vibration as they were hitting me because it was a small room, because it was a poor area, and they were holding me tight. And they were dancing like their lives depended on it, but they were dancing with joy. And as they were dancing, they held me tight. And then they looked at me and they said, Kwenza, which means dance. And in that moment, all the shyness left me. And I just said, fuck it, I'm going to dance, you know? And I just danced. And in that moment, this electricity went through me. This like powerful lightning bolt of electricity went through my body, went through my knees, and it's almost like all the way down. And then just like this like primal energy or scream just came through me, you know, and through my crown, through my spine. And that was it. That was like, suddenly I was in. I was like this live wire, you know. And then from then on, my dancing abilities got strong and strong, and people used to come from all over to watch me dance because they'd never seen a white person dance like this. And as the elders would say, he's a Sangoma. The ancestors are going through him. Don't worry about the color of his skin. If he can't dance, he's not a Sangoma. This is the sign that he's a Sangoma. So people used to come from all over to watch this white guy who has the calling of being a Sangoma, to watch him in action. Because a Sangoma, you can't prove you're a Sangoma through your words and how well you speak. You have to show you're a Sangoma with your dancing, with your energy, with how you heal people, with how you dance, how you drum, how you sing. So they used to come from everywhere to watch and see me dance. So there used to be a lot of people at my ceremonies, you know, and everyone would be checking me out and they'd be taking pictures and be watching me, and there'll be crowds of people, you know. And it was for someone who's shy, I tell you, you know, it would have been easier for me to sit as a Zen monk in South Korea. You know, it was very confronting, you know, all these people, and apartheid had just ended. And white, you know, white people were very much the enemy, you know. So I was in this environment where I could feel people hating the color of my skin, but they didn't know John. So I could feel this hatred on me in the beginning, and I could see people watching me from like the corner of the street and from the distance. I could see them watching me. And on the Friday, you could feel this animosity towards me, and I used to feel They don't know John, but they know this white skin. And white skin in South Africa is not really a good thing, you know? And being in South Africa, I understood. They just see my white skin. They don't know me and my calling. So they would be like, you could feel this energy on Friday. And then on Saturday, they'd be checking me out as I'm dancing. And then on Sunday, when the ceremony ended, people would come to me and they'd hold me and they would cry. They would cry. Yeah, they'd just hold me. And they would cry. And then they would say, Wena linkulu, you're a senior sangoma. Wena linkulu. They'd hold me. So my journey was very painful, as you can feel, not easy. And when I met Malidoma Some, many of you have heard of Malidoma Some, and I had the great honor of meeting him, of spending time with him, and sharing some of these stories. And he turned to me one day and he said, John, it's not supposed to be easy. To be a shaman, to be a sangoma is not supposed to be easy. You know, in this modern, westernized, civilized world, everything must be quick, everything must be easy, but then everything is superficial. But when you go into the depth of spirit, to the wilderness inside of you, don't expect it to be easy. So he shared that wisdom and teaching with me, and I really appreciated that. And so now the difficulties I've experienced, I can share with tears of joy and sadness and grief, but, you know, tears of wonderment and mystery. And that's why I share these stories, because, you know, there's so much ignorance with the human race nowadays. We have iPhones and smartphones that can teach you many things. And for example, me and Wake, in preparing for this class, I said to him, you know, there's no excuse for people to be ignorant about Africa nowadays. And I said, let's do an experiment, Wake. And I said, within 1 minute, I will tell you everything about Africa. And I got my phone out, and Wake can witness this. And I just put Africa into Wikipedia. And within 1 minute, it showed me the map of Africa. And it showed me 54 countries, over 2,000 different languages. So it showed me many, many things. So I said to Wake, I want to share about the beauty of South Africa culture in terms of the mystery of the shamanism and the truth of someone with white skin becoming a shaman, becoming a sangoma. And people need to open their hearts. People need to open their hearts, open their consciousness to another non-Western way of connecting to spirit. Over to you, Wake.
What a calling you've had, John, and what a blessing that you are willing to share your journey with us. I think it's clear you had to dance,
And
and
I still do.
you would accept no other option. The
No,
easy
no.
the easy path was not for you.
Yes.
I want to swing back just a tiny bit and tell me more about the gift is our own mortality, because you seem to feel that so deeply and it guided you in so many of your decisions.
Well, again, this is where spiritual teachings, whether it's Zen or yoga, all spiritual mystery schools speak about the same thing. The gift is your mortality. But if those are just words, then you're going to keep shopping like a hungry ghost for your whole life. so the mortality we have, the gift is our mortality. So like in Buddhism, for example, they would say that it's a great blessing being born human. It's a great gift. It's a very auspicious birth to be born human. And nowadays, when you see species extinction on the uprise and you see how animals are suffering, you see that there is a great gift in being born human. But the question I ask everyone is, what does it mean to be a human being? Because nowadays, a lot of people are not acting as human beings. So the first thing human people need to do to engage with their humanity is to appreciate their humanity. Appreciate first that you're alive. There's a breath going through me. I'm not dead. And the next thing, appreciate whether if you're healthy, if you're not sick. There's so many people who are sick. So that's the next appreciation. And appreciate your human birth. Often in spiritual circles, I find people do a workshop and they want something. And I often feel very sad when I see that because they want something from me. And I'll say, I can't give you anything. All I can do is show you these teachings, but you have to do the practice. And the first thing a student has to do, whether they're a Sangoma student, whether they're a shamanic student, whether they're a yoga or Buddhist or mindful or Christian student of life, the first thing you have to do is appreciate that you are alive. Appreciate your mortality and know that life is fleeting and we are not on this earth in this form forever. Animals die, people die. And that existential contemplation about life is extremely important. And if that is not done, don't go and do workshops and buy books on spirituality. You're wasting your time and you're wasting your money. Why are you alive? What is this life? That's a very, very, very important question. And then you can ask that spirit inside of you, that wind that is giving you life, where to go to find the answers for you to come into your humanity. Because a human being is not just someone that's on Amazon that buys things and just takes from the environment. That's not just a human being. That's part of human, but it's not a human being. A human being is a creature that is empathic, that is sensitive, that is engaged with all the 7 senses that the divine gave us. The elephant represents 6 senses. As a human being, we have 7 senses. That 7th sense is the sense of manifestation, of being able to change the world around us. Meaning you have a dream, like Sergeant Maluleki, where he's shown who's going to die. And because he's shown that, he can change the karma of his platoon members if they listen. So if they laugh, they're going to die. But if they listen to Sergeant Maluleki, then they might go, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to go on platoon today. Maybe I need to change something, or maybe I need to make peace with my spirits, with my ancestors before I die. And in that moment, their karma changes. Why? Because Sergeant Maluleki is engaged with his 7th sense. He's listening to the dreams and he's manifesting his dreams because he's sharing them with his platoon member, with one of his soldiers. So all of us have that ability. But if we are locked into what can I get? What can I get? I'm going to go and do the ceremony that I've heard as special medicine that people are drinking, and it means I can see the future. Let me go and get that. No. That's not good practice. I'm sorry. No. That's hungry ghost. So rather take up golf and enjoy golf, because it will teach you more about the wind and the birds and the weather and the beauty of being alive. Spiritual practice first is about feeling the life force inside of you. That's the first movement. That's our mortality, and that's our gift. Because if you don't appreciate the gift you've got, how are you ever going to know what your calling is and what your purpose is, as the Buddha said? So in Xhosa way, we talk about umsebenzi ukukhanya. So it's saying the spiritual work is about shining. Umsebenzi ukukhanya, khanya umsebenzi. The work of connecting to your spirit is the work of connecting to your ancestors, to your bones. It's the work of shining.
I love how you talk about that tension, John, between the imperative of being in service, the imperative of manifesting, doing something, and wanting to potentially push a relationship with an elder. And and you didn't. I don't believe you did. I believe that you engaged, uh, put yourself over, gave yourself over, that you were open enough to listen and to watch and to be guided. Um, how did that quality arise within you? What can we learn from that 10-year apprenticeship of surrender and openness?
Yes, and thanks for asking, because I mean that was the main reason for us having this webinar. So the journey is a long journey, and it's long for all of us, not just for me. It's long for all of us, And the first thing is we have to be available to listen, okay? And I'm not saying I'm a perfect person, okay? Because I'm not. But the reason why I listened is because I experienced so much suffering, and there was no solution for me. So the solution first came when I met my first Zen teacher, and what she said made sense. So I listened more deeply. And then she recommended a book, and I listened because I started to feel better. So for people listening, the first thing each person needs to do is they need to learn to improve their powers of listening to themselves first. Listen to your pain. Listen to your suffering. Listen to your joy. Listen to everything. So when I was in South Korea, my Zen master Subong, he was my teacher. He was my main teacher. And then there was a lineage Zen master who invited me to be a monk in the temple. But my personal teacher was Zen master Subong, and so he mentored me. And there weren't too many monks there, so he used to give out to me. So in those days, the Zen masters were quite strong. There would be no fluffy duffy. If you're making a mistake, he would tell me. So I remember him saying to me, he said to me one day, John, don't just do your own thing. He said, watch around you. How are the Korean monks operating? Watch and listen, see their behavior. Don't just do your own thing, And because I felt a little bit embarrassed when he said that to me, so I paid attention. I think I was only 21 then, So there was a very, very powerful teaching that he gave me, and I was ready to hear him. Don't just do your own thing. Watch the Korean monks. What are they doing? And then what he meant was, just to be clear with you, was that we were in South Korea, and the main language there was not English, it was Korean in this temple. And there were some Korean monks knew English, but most didn't. Most just spoke in Korean. So we had to learn some Korean, but we also had to learn the culture. And so what Zen Master Subong was saying to me is, watch how the other Korean monks do things. Watch how they do it. So to watch means to listen and to observe, not give your own opinion on things. So that was a fundamental training for me for when I arrived at my teacher's home and she invited me to be her apprentice, because the medium of conversation and everything was not in English, it was in Xhosa. It's still in the Xhosa language. So my job there was to watch the body language. I watched the body language of people, and I watched the expressions on their faces, and I listened. So that's how I started to learn the language, was listening, but I watched their body language. And I also watched how people treated my teacher and how they treated the elders. Okay, so they didn't go up to the elders and just hug them. They didn't go up and crowd the elders in terms of their personal space. There was a process of approaching them. So I watched that very, very carefully. And then at the same time, what was also happening to me, and this is where I was very fortunate, I received dreams where I was told by my ancestors, by my spirits, how to behave in certain ways, And then I would check in with my interpreter and with my close Xhosa friends who did speak English. And I'd say, I had a dream about this. What does it mean? And they go, wow, you're connecting to Umsebenzi, Izinyanya. They would say to me, Izinyanya zimangaliso, which means the ancestors work in mysterious ways because they're teaching you our ways through your dreams. So they explained it to me and they were like amazed. So that quality of listening is very important with elders, not interrupting, not pushing yourself on them, and then also watching how people in that indigenous culture, how they treat their people, Another very important point to make, and that's got to do with time and patience. Often people coming from Western countries, going into indigenous communities, they don't have a lot of time, which means they don't have a lot of patience, which means they push themselves on the elders because they're looking for an interview, they're looking for a result, they're looking for help, they're looking for something, and they don't have a lot of time because they're only on holiday for like maybe a week or 2 weeks, and then they have to go back to America or back to Europe or back to London. And there's this urgency around them. And that urgency actually puts people off and makes people want to run away, So what happened for me is I couldn't afford to live with my teacher or live close to her for 12 months of the year. But what I did feel intuitively and the guidance I received was that I should live with my teacher or live close to her for a minimum of 3 months, 3 months a year. And that's what my spirit said to me. And the reason is because you can't put pressure on the elders. If there's a dream and there's a dream you're working on, or there's a ceremony, or the spirits have to talk to you, it takes time. So you have to be patient. So I would arrive at my teacher's place and there'd be a lot of dreams that I'd share with her, and she would get exhausted listening to my dreams. And then she got exhausted explaining the culture to me. And then I had to watch her body language and watch, okay, it's enough. I need to just chill for a few days because I could feel she's getting tired trying to explain all of this to me. And so that's the first thing. So that's why I made sure that I was there with enough time where I'm not going to put pressure on her, and I'm not going to put pressure on the elders, and I'm not going to put pressure on the community to give me the solutions. I must just be there and make sure I'm patient. And then the second thing I noticed also was, to not ask for things really, just to do the basics in terms of ceremony and to share my dreams, and then also to ask the elders what I can do to help them. So that's what I would do. So then my elders, I ended up taking a lot of people to the hospital because no one had a car. So I used to take as part of my giving and my service, part of my service was taking elders to the hospital and actually being a translator with the doctors. And I used to fight for healing and for treatments with certain of our Sangoma elders. So it got so much that people would call on me and they'd say, we're not going to the hospital until Tringo's here, till John's here. So I would take them to the hospital and I'd be the only white guy there, and everyone would think that I'm one of the doctors. And then when one of the doctors come, they're so shocked that I was there. And then I would push the doctor to not just push them aside, that they would give me a reason why they're giving the medication, that they would make sure that everything was being looked after in terms of my beloved elder's body. And And this was part of my service. So an important part of the practice of working with Indigenous elder, it's not just about you. How can you help that community? How much can you listen? How much can you be patient? How much can you not push yourself on the people? And then the other thing is time. You know, if you're really in love with the community, you need to take some time and actually spend time with them. So for me, I was lucky I was young. I was a young man in my 20s and then early 30s. But, you know, I used to take out a student loan from the bank, you know, to actually pay for my flights so I could be at home, pay for my apprenticeship. And it took me many, many years to pay off my apprenticeship because of the student loan I accrued, because I couldn't work for 3 months while I'm sitting learning Indigenous knowledge with my teacher. And my family and friends were so amazed in South Africa. They said, who, John, can take 3 months off every year and just sit in a village for 3 months? Who can do that? So my family and friends were actually kind of annoyed with me. They said, are you crazy? What's wrong with you, John? My family would be really like, they couldn't understand me. They couldn't understand me. And I remember saying to my mother, Mom, one day this Indigenous knowledge that I'm learning is going to be highly, highly sought after. And I need to learn this Indigenous knowledge, and it's gold. It's gold dust, and it's not appreciated in South Africa today and in the world. But I said one day it's going to be appreciated. So I'm going to trust in my intuition and take the loan out of the bank. And that's what I did. So every year, my bank manager used to get a bit annoyed with me because I'd top up my loan. So this is about sacrifice. If you really want to work with Indigenous elders, you have to sacrifice something. Your time, your energy, your money. How important is it for you to sit with them? That's very, very important, you know. So when I work with students and they give me all the reasons why they cannot sit with me for 6 weeks, I keep quiet because, you know, I'm just asking myself, what is the calling that they have? What is the calling they have? And they said, oh, there's children and there's this and that. I'm like, yes, it's difficult. Yes, yes, it's difficult. But this indigenous knowledge is very sacred. And we cannot just arrive in a village and impose ourselves on a group of people and expect them to dance and do ceremonies for us and teach us their ways and their language in 2 weeks. What is that? That's hungry ghost energy. And that's like a virus. It's like a plague in the world. And we need to treat that hungry ghost energy. And that hungry ghost energy you treat through soul, through spirit, through feeling the breath inside of you, feeling the gift of being alive. And then you feel patience and grace. And then that Indigenous elder, you're not putting pressure on them.
I just want to chime in here for a minute and say thank you for the last 10 minutes of teaching around protocol and really the whole idea of sacrifice and patience and reciprocity and knowing that there's a sacrifice that needs to be made and time that needs to be made. And, you know, how, I won't say brilliant of you because you were guided, but the fact that you took out loans and that you knew that you needed to sit in that community for 3 months and be patient. And it's just, you know, guidance that we need in the Western world to hear so badly is, you know, when you were, was it Vietnamese monks? Korean.
Korean, yeah, South
Korean
Korea,
monks.
South Korea,
You
yeah.
know, that whoever said to you, just watch what the other monks are doing, you know, and you took that back to South Africa and you applied that with your Xhosa teachers and to just be with the elders and experience how people interact in their community and how people interact with their elders, and to not do it the way we do it. That hungry ghost energy. I love that also, that we have a 2-week holiday where we think we're going to go and get infused with something and take it home with us without thinking about how that's going to occur on the other side of the equation. So much of what you said in terms of your own experience really applies to Indigenous elders and teachers across the world, and how to think about approaching communities and elders anywhere that we might want to learn something, and thinking about how we might want to organize our lives. Like you said, if a student comes to you and they're having difficulty figuring out how they're going to spend 6 weeks with you, maybe you don't have too much to say. You just notice that, and you notice the level of their commitment. Or I don't know if you might say something like, well, if it's important enough, I guess you'll figure it out. But it was just, beautiful to hear you say all of that. And that's, exactly what I was hoping we would be able to hear today from you. So thank you so much. And I want to turn it back to Wake, but I want you to also be able to share your slides that you brought and tell us about your upcoming programs and your offerings as well. So Wake, let me turn it back over to you to see if you have any other questions you want to ask John, but I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Tricia.
Anything more to say, John? I do have an inquiry, but anything in response to Tricia's, I think that's so important to apply your work to all the elders we're in contact with. Is there anything you'd like to offer about that? Anything else?
Yeah, and it's very important to recognize the calling in the person in front of you, not the color of their skin, you know. Because this is another thing that it happens with Westerners. They see someone with a different color of skin and then they say, oh, that person's Indigenous. So then they don't respect the person in front of them who does have white skin and who is a senior shaman, because they don't look Indigenous, because they've got white skin. So this is something that happens, that I've experienced many times. I remember with a client once that came to me, I was mentoring him, and he said, my ancestors, I keep asking my ancestors to bring me to a shaman to teach me the old ways. And then this particular client was very, very gifted. And then one day I said to him, am I not good enough for you? He said, what? I said, am I not good enough for you? I said, I'm initiated in 2 ancient shamanic lineages, and I'm a senior Sangoma in both. And I have committed myself to this path, and I've done my apprenticeship, and I love my elders and I work with them, and I'm sitting here teaching you, and your ancestors have brought me to you. Am I not good enough for you? And he was so shocked. And I said, you need to look beyond the color of my skin. When I close my eyes, you close your eyes. When I play my drum, I want you to feel Africa moving through me. I don't want you to have blinkers on your eyes. If your eyes have got blinkers, close them and listen to my voice. And then thank your ancestors for bringing you a teacher to help you. And he was so shocked. And I find a lot of people do this. They look for a teacher, but they're not noticing who's standing in front of them. So the practice I want to share with everyone, it's not about the color of your skin. We have shamans, all colors of skin in the world. The Celtic shamans from a mother's background were just as good as the Xhosa. The Xhosa people are just as good as you. There's no group of people that are better than another. The only question for each of us is, how is the wind of life calling me? And putting Indigenous people on a pedestal is also a problem. People need to be careful because you are also equal to the Indigenous person. What happens with people in the West, they have very severe spiritual poverty. And then often in Indigenous groups, people often have quite severe material poverty. So that is almost like an oil and water situation. So that's why we have to be very patient and very careful with one another, with Indigenous or traditional and modern, because the modern person might have money materially, but they might have spiritual poverty. The traditional person might not have money, but might have incredible spiritual wealth. So it's like people have to be very delicate and very compassionate with one another, which means being gentle, but also respecting yourself. You are just as good as an Indigenous person. An Indigenous person is just as good as you. Let's meet each other as human beings to reimagine and recreate our collective humanity. Not through saying, oh, this person's better because they initiated in that culture and they're a shaman, they this and that. No, 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 no. Respect someone for their humanity and listen to them. Listen to them. But firstly, people need to learn to listen to themselves and listen to the voices inside of you and listen to your own ancestors. Thanks, Wake.
I want to go on to our own lineage. I know there are pictures that I really enjoy seeing, images of your land.
Yes.
I just have to ask this first, briefly.
Yes.
Is there any hope for us in the Zoom universe? Is there any hope to connect with a teacher like yourself, other elders, other people of knowledge through this global type of platform?
Yes. In fact, I think this is one of the blessings of technology. I don't know how to be able to do it otherwise. I feel so blessed to be able to sit with all of you, and it's one of the creative blessings of technology, and we need to hold on to that because technology has both sides, has a positive side and it has a challenging side. But this is a very powerful positive, I want to say, because as technology improves, it makes it easier to sit and have a divination with someone like me or someone in South Africa. It makes it easier to learn this Indigenous knowledge. But the same rule applies in terms of you need to be patient. So when you're sitting with someone, it's like the window into their world. And then we need to not have high expectations from the spiritual side of things when technology is going so quickly. So technology goes quickly, you connect with someone, you're there with them, but then don't have the same expectation with your dreams coming quickly, with your relationship with your ancestors coming quickly, with your language ability in Spanish or Xhosa or Zulu. Just be patient and just say, oh, thank God for technology that I can sit with this beautiful being at the other end of the world. And so, yes, I have huge hope for the Zoom universe, and it means that we can support each other. And I think it's like a miracle. I think it's great.
That's good to hear because that's what I'm experiencing at this moment. I'm sure everyone else, the audience is as well, this miracle of connection with one another through this forum. And the way that you're able to reach us so directly, as Tricia is rightly saying, from the heart of the computer to our hearts. I think that is a beautiful phrase, Tricia, that you heard from the Pacos and are sharing now. Wow. Okay, maybe this should wait till the last, but how can we serve you better?
I suppose the best is to listen to your heart. If people want to serve me, then you can just email, or you can people can sign up for my newsletter to see what events I have. They can sign up for my monthly webinar, which is a small amount every month, and I do ceremonies every month online. So that helps to support me and my family, just those monthly webinars. So that's amazing. And then, of course, just taking part they want to come on retreat with me to South Africa, which is a big offering. But if people feel called to donate to my Ubuntu fund, they can do that as well. And then I send that money to my beloved elders in South Africa. And there's always health issues and food issues. And so I'm constantly on the phone to my elders in South Africa, helping them. And it's largely because of the Ubuntu fund that I have where people donate and they help. And so I always say thank you for that. I often do like a fundraise like once a year. So I'm going to be doing a fundraise quite soon, actually coming towards the end of the year, because some of my elders have quite critical health issues. So when I send the money, we'll make sure they go and see doctors, good doctors who can listen to them and help them, and make sure there's no shortage of food and things like that. So that's what I do. So if you support that, then you're also supporting my elders, and you're also supporting this wonderful energy of Ubuntu, of this collective consciousness. So that's a big part of my service, is as soon as I go back to South Africa and I'm with my elders, I see what I can do to help. And often it means taking them to doctors and buying food. And so that will be a great way for people to help. Yeah.
It just feels like you have such an imperative to be of service, John. And I hope that your guidance for us to listen or source the beat of our hearts more clearly, more truthfully, more authentically will allow that to emerge. I don't know if we could hope to be guided in the way that you are, but it's such an example, your life, your calling, the way you've put your life and your time and your effort and energy behind what you believe.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your words, Wake. Thank you so much. I have to thank the dreams and the intuitions and the messages I get, because when I'm working with clients and students and people who want to work with me and listen to me, it's all coming from my own background and what's happened to me. So the intuition I got a long time ago was, when we're doing a spiritual practice, this is the way I was guided. Okay, when you're doing a spiritual practice, it's for this life and the next. Okay, so I always say to students, in this moment and in the dream time and in the dreams, in this moment and in the next. So when we're doing a prayer and we're doing an offering, it's for this moment and the next. The next is when we, in our dreams, that the spiritual practice will continue into the dream time, and also when we drop our physical body. So your spiritual practice must be at such a level that if you die in the next moment, you're going to carry on practicing whatever you've been taught. And if you're not, then you need to change your practice and put more metal into it. So when I was meditating with my Zen master in the early 90s, this is basically the way he used to talk to us. So I was trained by him. He was Zen master Subong. He was half Korean and half Chinese. He was brought up in Hawaii. And so he was my first American teacher, friend, or mentor. And he used to teach us and tell us a lot about America and Hawaii. And then he was designated to be the Zen master that was going to take over from Sung San, this big lineage in South Korea. And then sadly he died mysteriously at the age of 50, and it was really heartbreaking for a lot of us in South Africa. But in the practice, he would always say, when you're meditating, you must meditate in such a way that if this world changes and if you die, that you take the practice into the other world. So he used to talk like that to us. So I use that essence because the Sangoma world is like that as well. And that brings metal into the practice, and it also brings commitment.
Would this be a good time, John, for you to show us some images of the land you steward and are so inspired by as well, and the
Yes,
people who live
yes,
there?
yes, let's do that. So I'm just going to show everyone some beautiful images. So I'm going to put the share on, and here we go. Can you all see that? It's the way we did it before. Wake, the elephant.
Yes, beautiful. Yes,
Good.
well done.
Okay, so this is an elephant park close to where I live in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, and the elephants were the first start of my journey because my mom had a vision of elephants when she was walking in the Dunleary Pier in Dublin in the 1950s, and this is what called her to Africa. The elephants called my mom to Africa. And it's interesting enough because Sangomas are known as Abantu Bandlovu, which means the people of the elephant, because we are telepathic and we communicate and we tend the dead and we tend the life. So there's the elephants. And this is my beloved community. So this is the home that I was adopted into with my teacher. And this is where we do ceremony, and this is a traditional ceremony. And these are young Xhosa apprentices all dressed in white. And on the right is one of my colleagues. She's leading the ceremony there. And then there's the men at the back. And here's my beloved colleagues again. The lady with the clay on her face is a junior initiate. So you have clay all over your face as a junior initiate. And then as you become more senior, then the clay goes around your eyes, as you see with my friend here. And there's me with my beloved elders. There's my teacher, Mam Gwevu, in the forefront. And next to her is her brother, Tata Ngwevu. And then we've got my teacher's husband right behind her next to me, Tata Sugwini, who's a tribal elder, very, very senior tribal elder, very, very humble man. And he's adopted me like his son, you know. And then in the back there is Tata Bongan, who helped me for many years translating. And then he died tragically a couple of years ago. So yeah, we are still grieving his death. Yeah. Yeah, it's been very difficult for us the last couple of years without Tata Bongan. And it's interesting because his name in Xhosa means Mtutuzeli, and Mtutuzeli in English means the comforter, the comforter. So that was the name that his family gave him when he was born because it showed his purpose in life. And oh my God, Mtutuzeli is like one of the best names for him. He comforted everyone in the community, everyone, probably especially me. And there's me dancing. That's the traditional dance. And I'm doing the trance dance there in the Xhosa tradition. And we dressed with skins because as you're a senior Sangoma, you have your outfit changes. So the clay goes around your eyes, and then you wear animal skins around your body to show your relationship with the wild, to show that you have befriended your animal totems. So those animal totems are part of you. They're inside you. So when we wear those skins, we are welcoming all our spirits, our human spirit and animal spirit. So in that moment, I'm a wild African Sangoma dancing with my animal spirits. And there again is an image after my final initiation where I became a senior Sangoma in 2007. There I am with my teacher's husband on the right, Tata Sugwini, and my teacher on the left. And this was quite a monumentous moment, actually, because it was the first time in recent history that a white person had become a senior Sangoma in that particular part of the country. So we went to the media and we shared the story because I wanted to bring about cultural healing and also healing for South Africa. So this is a wonderful image that a photographer took. This is another beautiful image of one of the trainee Sangomas, Xhosa Sangomas, being pensive, just about to start drumming to call in the ancestors. And this is a beautiful friend of mine who's going into trance. He's a very well-known psychic, Vumile, and he's singing. He's an incredible singer, and he's chanting, and he's calling in the ancestors there. And this is some of the elder men preparing themselves for the ceremony. And there's Tatazawini in his element, about to call in the ancestors and call in the people. And you know, his stature, he's a short man, so he's not very tall. But when he speaks, my mom would say, when he speaks, everyone listens. Doesn't matter if you understand Xhosa or not, you will stop talking and you will listen to him. He has this incredible voice. And I think it's partly because he's such a humble man, incredibly humble, incredibly dedicated, and incredibly loving. So I've been very lucky. So there's some of the trainee sangomas. Xhosa sangomas always dress in white. And it's very important for them to look beautiful in terms of look after their channel, which is their physical body. So you see the white and the beads, and yeah, they're very, very dignified. So this is a special moment, a special ceremony. There's me there, and my teacher's given me a sacred object that is being blessed by the elders. And yeah, it was a very special ceremony, that. And then this is after the ceremony. We were all just kicking back. The ceremony is being performed to be just resting. So these are all my colleagues, my friends, and we've been close together now for 25 years. There's my beloved teacher, Mam Gwevu, on the end, and a very good friend of mine on the right, and her mom on the left. So, so very special. So this is where we do a lot of ceremonies outside. This is known as the kraal, or the space that we call in the ancestors. And it's covered with thorns on the outside, and the animals are normally in the center. And we usher the animals out, and then we do the ceremonies in the center there. So this is in the rural areas of the Eastern Cape. So this is my teacher's home, and there's me starting the ceremony. So I'm baptizing the totem pole in the center with tobacco, and just to starting the ceremony before people come in with prayer, with intention. And yeah, it's a beautiful moment to see the dog relaxing, and we're calling in the spirit. So this is, again, before the ceremony starts, just a picture of the streets, and the clouds are coming in, the rains are going to start. And then just that beautiful moment before the prayers begin. And then this is me in the Kalahari Desert, where I make a shrine tent in the desert. And then I welcome people in to connect to the spirit of the land in the Kalahari. So for those of you who don't know, the Kalahari is in Botswana, which is above South Africa. So this is going back and forth. So this is another picture of me in my teacher's kraal, in a sacred space where we call in the ancestors. So you see some goats there, some Sangoma friends, and we're about to start a ceremony. And then back into the Kalahari again, or sorry, into Botswana. This is the Okavango. So this is another part of the trip I do. We go to the Kalahari for 7 days, and then we go to the Okavango Delta. And those two places are seen as the 7 wonders of Africa in terms of the wilderness. And there's so many elephants in Okavango Delta. It's incredible. We have them very close to our tent, and they inspire me to keep doing this work because of their awesome intelligence and just who they are, these beings of magic. These are the elephants. So this is from my first trip in the Kalahari Desert. The rains had just come, and there was like a lake that had developed, and just these incredible scenes of the land, of the water, of the sun, of the landscape. So this is so beautiful, and it's so captivating and inspiring. So I took these pictures. And then again, this is going back and forth, so please excuse me. But again, this is me dancing with my community just a couple of years ago, doing a ceremony. And the pulse, the energy was so incredible. And then again, this is flipping back to me in the Kalahari, where I befriended one of the San Bushman elders. And here he is teaching us about making fire in the bush and foraging for medicinal plants. So I love that, you know. I love that work of going into the Kalahari, calling in the gift, or the calling in the umoya, we say, which is the wind of nature, and then listening to how nature's calling us, listening to our dreams, and then allowing nature around us to teach us. And sometimes it's a bird, sometimes it's an animal. And in this moment, it's the Kalahari San Bushmen that were teaching us and showing us how to light fire and how to engage with finding medicinal plants in the bushveld. And this was actually the culmination of a very powerful vision I had. And that vision was ancient and modern man sitting around a fire, revisioning our humanity. Ancient and modern man around a fire, revisioning our humanity. And I'm very happy to say that this happened, because one of the elders took a shine to me and asked to do ceremony with me in the shrine tent. And this happened a couple of years ago. So now we are doing ceremony together with prayer and with song. So it's very beautiful work, you know. So that's the end of the slideshow. Thanks everyone for watching it.
Well, I want to thank you, John. That was so gorgeous. The slideshow was beautiful. There was one question that there seemed to be a lot of women training as Sangoma. And the question was, are there other men who also train to become Sangoma?
Yes, it's a good question. And yes. There are mostly women in the Xhosa tradition. So I'd say 80 or 90% are women. Maybe close to 80 or 90. It depends on the area that you go to. So I was unusual in my teacher's home because I was the only man, actually. And then also being a white man. And so it's quite unusual. But I learned so much from the woman, and I still learn so much from the woman. You know, the medicine is held in a very matriarchal way. And so I've spent many months and years with with the matriarchs, with the grandmothers, and they have such a special place in my heart. And it's quite common to see that with a lot of indigenous shamanic cultures, where the matriarchs or the women are holding the medicine. But to answer your question, yes, in other cultures in South Africa, amongst the Sangoma, we do get men. So there are quite a few men, but by and large, it seems to be more women.
Mm. So I also wanted to thank you for what you said about your vision about ancient and modern man coming together to re-envision humanity, because that's what we're attempting to do here at Shamans Directory.
Yes.
And so we really thank you for holding that vision and having it long before we did, but holding it in space and time. We hold that vision as well. So I want to honor the time, but if people need to leave on the hour, that's absolutely fine. This is recorded and will be posted tomorrow, but I want to give you a chance to talk about any upcoming offerings you have that people.
Yes, and for those folks who maybe want to dash off, all I could say is don't dash off yet, because I'm still going to be doing my drum. So unless you absolutely have to because it's urgent, then obviously do it. But I would like to play my drum, which I like to do at the end. So get yourself a cup of tea and come back, and I'll play my drum in a few minutes.
Yes, it's really worth hearing John play his drum, I must say. Yes, please stay for that if you can. And I'm just looking to see if there are any other questions. Let's see. What emotions, habits, or behavior in your experience tend to cloud humans' inner vision? Uh-oh, we've got a whole nother class coming up here. This is a class, but
Yeah, I can speak
yeah,
a little bit about that with
yeah,
emotion. So, emotion is something that we face as sangomas because when you are doing very high ceremony where you're dancing and you're connecting to your spirit and your soul, what's happening is your spine is heating up. Your spine is heating up. And I think it's obvious to say your emotions are going to be heated up as well. Your pain, your story, your your issues, all those issues, they all come up. But it's what the elders say is that we mustn't throw our anger on other people in the community. We mustn't throw our anger when we're doing ceremony. So a very important part of the practice is to be responsible and to own your own emotions, to befriend your own shadow world. Your shadow world are those uncomfortable emotions inside of you. An important part of the practice is to feel them, is to integrate them, to not suddenly throw them onto your teacher, someone else, and say they are responsible for you feeling bad. So it means the ceremony here is not a good ceremony. No, 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 no. In the Sangoma world, if you are feeling strong emotions during a ceremony, whether they are good or bad, it's often a good sign that the medicine of the ceremony is taking root and you are experiencing good medicine. But if those are uncomfortable emotions for you, you need to deal with it. It's part of your work. You can't just throw it on the teacher and make it the responsibility of them or of the president or of the community leader. No, 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 no. Feel your emotions. If someone is responsible because they've hurt you and they've done something which they shouldn't have, that's another story. Then you feel that anger and you do, as Nelson Mandela said, you feel the anger and you do something about it. So Nelson Mandela is a good example of that, as is the Dalai Lama. Anger is a wonderful emotion to get you activated, but we have to be careful about not letting emotion cloud us and into victimhood and blame.
thank you. Lots of people are asking how to reach you. I have the link to your website and your
And
Facebook and
so
Instagram.
I'll just put it in here. There's
Perfect.
just one basic contact for everyone, which is the sign up to my newsletter. But
Okay.
otherwise, my website is johnlockley.com. So that's
Yeah.
it's not
Pretty easy.
difficult. Yeah, it's pretty easy. So I'm just going to put it in here, where I put it in the chat here.
And I'm
Just
also interested in the link to
there's the link there to my
your
newsletter.
Ubuntu fund as well
So my Ubuntu Fund link is where it says donate, and
on your website.
on the website it says
Okay,
donate,
great,
and I
great,
will just put the link there. But it's all on my website again,
great.
and I'll just put it into the chat there. There we go. There's the donate button underneath here. Okay.
And I left your book upstairs. So you
Oh,
have your
thanks.
book right there. I saw you, so
Yeah.
flash it for everyone to see. There you go.
So I talk about the journey in the book, and if people are interested in getting a copy of it, it is available in many places. And I'll just put up here my publisher, which is Sounds True. I'll just put their link in quickly for you into the chat. Otherwise, you can get it in most places. So
Great. And
there's the
again, I will put all these links under the video too. So if people aren't good at copying things, they'll all be there for you.
yeah, yeah. So maybe the last thing I could just mention is my Kalahari retreats. That is a wonderful way for people to experience the teachings and also the wilderness, and also have a bit of a holiday. But with the shrinking of the wilderness around the world and in Africa, I had to really find a place where it's still what I call the Garden of Eden, that place of innocence, that place of wildness. And I was very lucky to team up with people in the Kalahari and in the Okavango. And really, the Kalahari Desert is a wonderful example of the Garden of Eden, that place of innocence. And that's where I like to bring people to learn these ancient teachings. So if you are interested in animal communication, if you are interested in interspecies communication, if you are interested in the wilderness, if you're interested in African shamanism and the energy of the drum and the energy of ancestors and medicinal plants, non-hallucinogenic, then this could be for you. So just look on my website, look at the Kalahari Desert. Dreams and Tracking in the Kalahari is what it's called. Dreams and Tracking in the Kalahari. And we still have a few places for the retreat next year. We have 2 retreats, February and March, and there are a few places left. So, so you're very welcome, all of you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, John, for everything. This has been so incredibly rich and wonderful today. So thank you so much for everything. And we honor you for all of your work and all of your studies and suffering and all of the many thousands of times that you've had to explain yourself. We honor you. And we know that that's not going to stop. So we honor you for all the times in the future that you're going to have to defend yourself and who you are. And we honor that. So thank you so much. And your singing and drumming is so enchanting. And we thank you for closing with that.
Sure. And so special thanks to Tricia and Wake for reaching out to me, and for Shamans Directory. And, you know, for everyone who has the vision like Tricia of ancient and modern man sitting around a fire to revision our future of humanity, you know, it must be commended. So I really commend you guys, commend you, Tricia and Wake, for the work you're doing. And Zoom, there is hope, because as we connect together collectively, then we can share our hearts collectively. And just like a beehive, you know, a beehive thrives with the interconnectivity of each bee. A beehive thrives. So we are like a beehive with this collective humanity. So Zoom is helping us spread the nectar of our humanity. So thank you everyone for sitting. It is meaningful, and I thank you for your presence today. Thank you so much. I just introduce you to my drum. This is called the Isigubo, and it's a drum that came to me in my dream. And then I went and listened to the lady's voice, and she showed me where to buy it in Johannesburg, and I found it. And when I started drumming in the shop, people on the street heard a sangoma drumming, and they all came in, and the shop got packed with people. And then the people crowded around me, and then suddenly they said, Umlungu. They said, he's a white guy, but he's drumming like a sangoma. They were so shocked. Umlungu, uberisi gubo, hey, tiklawam. They said, the white guy is drumming like a sangoma. God works in mysterious ways. That's what they said. So what I encourage everyone who's listening, I appreciate you listening to my story, but I want you to listen to your own story, because my story is only a story to inspire you about your story, and that story is mystery and magic, and your own mystery and magic in terms of your relationship with the divine, because it is mysterious and it is magical, and I want you to embrace that, please. So as I play my drum, I welcome you to close your eyes right now and feel your heartbeat. Feel your breath. So before I start, I want you to just close your eyes and feel your heartbeat. Feel your breath and allow some stillness to come into you. Breathe in the wind, the umoya, the wind of life that moves between all the worlds of waking and dead. Breathe in the wind of life. Notice the fragrance of the wind. Notice the wind as it's moving through you. Does it have a smell? Notice that. And allow that breath to move into your heart. So feel your heartbeat. Feel still, feel calm. Feel the mystery of your life. Feel the beauty of your life. Feel the magic of your life. And as I start to drum, I call on you to welcome in your people, your bone people, your ancestors. Welcome them in because they are part of you. To be a human being also means to remember our dead. To remember our dead is part of being human. If we stop remembering our dead, we stop being human. The elephants remind us about remembering the dead. There's an old song in the Sangoma called Masiembo, which means let us remember our dead. Feel your breath. Feel your heartbeats. And let go into the spirit of the drum. Let go into the spirit of the drum. Abazali bamo, bamo, abazali bamo, bamo, hey abazali bam, hey abazali bam. Volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge. Volen le la bazali bamo, volen le la bazali bamo, volen le la bazali bam, volen le la bazali bam. Tamagui mnyonge, tamagui mnyonge, tamagui mnyonge, tamagui mnyonge. Volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge. Tamagui mnyonge, tamagui mnyonge, tamagui mnyonge, tamagui mnyonge. Volen le la bazali bamo, volen le la bazali bamo, volen le la bazali bam, volen le la bazali bam, volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge, volen le la mnyonge. Tamagui mnyonge, 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 tamagui mnyonge. Siyangola bana badala tamago, siyangola nkulunkulu tamago, siyangola izinyanya tamago, siyangola bana badala tamago. Siyangola izinyanya tamago, siyangola ngweve nosugwini tamago, siyangola Lockley noKelly tamago. Siyangola bazali bam tamago, Kelly Lockley tamago. Siyangola maqerha tamago, hey tamago, hey tamago, hey tamago. So honor and praise my ancestors in this world and the next. We all honor and praise our ancestors, our bone people, those people that make us human. Siyabulela, makhosi makhulu. We shine a light to you, to our collective humanity. May we remember, masikumbuza, let us remember the old ways. Masiyembo, Masiembo. Let us remember the old ways of our human race. Let us remember what it means to be human. Thank you.
Oh, many blessings, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you, Tricia.
I wanted to give a special thank you to you, John, for these very special moments that you've let us share together, for sharing your calling, your visions, your experience, your drumming, and a special thank you to the elephants who inspired your mother, who
Yeah.
took her on a great journey, who brought you to us today. So thank you for those elephants and for all the work you do in the world.
Yeah. Thanks, Wake. Thank you so much. Thank you.